Welcome to Into the Obscure, where we talk about indie games, indie movies, and I guess I forget the third category. What is the third category? Because I always break my brain on it.
Like
It's like
events and
life,
things.
yeah, like indie lifestyle or like things in the real world that are a little bit more obscure and people less know less about. We're actually doing one tomorrow that we will have a video on.
Ooh, yeah. So by the time this episode comes out, we'll have already done it. And
Ooh,
hopefully not long after this releases, we have the video available. You could have followed along on our socials if you didn't. So
yeah,
you dropped the
yeah,
ball there,
yeah.
didn't you?
Why didn't you do that?
Yeah. Which
What is into under the underscore the obscure?
yeah,
Wow, that is hard to say.
they are all on the descriptions.
There's a
They're
link.
there.
There's a link. There'll be a link down below, and then Rev will put it up above because he do be like that sometimes.
I do the thing sometimes.
just to put it exactly where I say it's not.
Well, this week we actually we checked out a weird movie that's a little bit of a class, or not really a classic. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a class. It might be. It's definitely older. This movie's like it was what 94.
So, well, first we have to go down the rabbit hole of,
Yes.
or we have to sidetrack from here a little bit and say, well, we found the movie and it goes, oh, this looks like it was released in 2019. Well, it was not released in 2019.
The app said it came out in 2019, but this goes into the point of what we're discussing in the idea that this movie was so obscure, even though it had some very recognizable actors in it, we had no idea when we saw it that this movie even existed, much less that it was made in 1994.
Yeah, we started watching it. We were like, dang, she looks like Denise Richards. And then we were like, wait, she is Denise Richards. She looks really good for being in her 50s. And we were like, wait.
Wait, that's Paul Walker.
We were like, no, Paul Walker wasn't making movies in 2019.
Yeah, so we watched a movie called Tammy and the T-Rex. To break this movie down into kind of a base synopsis, a mad scientist who is creating a robotic Tyrannosaurus needs one final piece to bring his creation to life. That's the synopsis of this movie, and it stars Denise Richards. It has Paul Walker. It even has some actors you would recognize in kind of the background, like Sean Whalen. I was shocked. I was shocked at how many people I knew in this movie.
Yeah, and it was probably a very early role for almost all of them because it was definitely not a high budget movie and it was definitely not well put together. Don't get me wrong, excellent movie, absolutely fabulous, very entertaining. It was absolutely hilarious, and it took the role of not taking itself too seriously
Yes.
and just nailed it.
So let's actually break that down. So we're gonna talk about the whole not taking itself seriously. So it was like the day before we watched this. We watched another movie. It was a lot of people who are into kind of obscure films or remember Blockbuster may remember a studio called The Asylum. Well, The Asylum always took big blockbuster films and tried to make their own versions of them that are, I can't even call them B films. I'm going to say like C plus on their best days. And
Blockbusters.
yeah, mockbusters are literally the genre of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And the day before, I swear it was the day before, we watched Tammy and the T-Rex. We watched a movie called Ape versus Monster, or as we took to calling it, Manky versus Lizard. In this movie, I will give a little backstory on this movie as well. This movie was essentially kind of a ripoff of Godzilla versus Kong, except it was about an ape, that was launched into space a long time ago, 30 years ago, and it crash landed back, brought some weird alien goo with it. A lizard ate the goo. It got giant. The ape got giant. They fought. Aliens got involved somehow, and it tried so hard to be a serious film, and it did it so poorly. Everything about
So bad.
The writing was bad. The acting was not great. Eric Roberts was in it. That was kind of cool. But it tried to take itself too seriously, knowing that it did not have the budget to be a very serious film in terms of like a blockbuster style film of it being big action shots and stuff like that. You can't take yourself too seriously on that.
Yeah. I don't know. Are we gonna talk about that movie a little bit more?
We could dive into it a little bit. That way we can draw these comparisons a little bit better, because I really want people to understand why we enjoyed Tammy and the T-Rex so much. So go ahead.
With Ape versus Monster, one thing that really drove me crazy is they had so many plot lines that they were trying to wrangle together. And they tried to make a very, very complex movie. Like even Kong versus Godzilla was not, with the budget that it had less plot lines. It was less complicated of trying to figure out what was going on, because there was the main character who was a scientist, who also was somehow like a scientist when she was like 10 with her dad, to have a relationship with this ape. And then she also had like an emotional connection with the ape 30 years ago, when she can't be older than 35. So it's like it's just very convoluted. Then the lizard and the ape were both being controlled by a alien that just appeared halfway through the movie and never explained why it was there or what was going on. And then the ape, because it breathed the gas and didn't drink the liquid, but it was injected with the liquid, it had its own control over its brain, but the lizard didn't, because the lizard only drank the liquid that was causing the aliens to be able to control it. There was just so many plot lines that were going on that and then there was like government corruption happening at the same time. It was like they were trying to juggle so many things that it was just impossible to really understand what was going on. Also, more aerial shots of Langley than in any other movie ever.
Oh my god. So I would love to take a second to talk about the absolute gem that was the aerial views of Langley. So I swear, it was no less than a dozen and a half. A dozen and a half aerial shots of Langley, and it was the exact same aerial shot every time. And there were a few of them that were at night, and whenever they shot them, they just put like a filter over it. They just put it was like a filter that just made it look like night. It was amazing.
And there was one shot they were using it as an establishing shot. And there was one time that we actually went back and clocked it. It was, they showed him at Langley, they showed someone somewhere else for, I think it was 45 seconds, and then they came back and showed another establishing shot at Langley. So it was establishing shot at Langley, 45 seconds, establishing shot at Langley. It was just a fever dream.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Langley, Virginia is where like CIA headquarters are. There's some government establishments there, so a good portion of the movie took place in Langley, Virginia. So when we say Langley, we're speaking specifically of Langley, Virginia, which I looked up photos of aerial shots of Langley, Virginia, and they didn't look the same. They did not look like the same place.
Also, they were scientists, so there's really no reason that they had to be in Langley, Virginia. There was no explanation why they had to be at CIA headquarters. Like, they could have been anywhere.
Well, cut it and post.
Yeah, all right. And we're back. Technical issues.
Yes. So, in terms of these establishing shots of Langley, there was zero reason for them to even be there, much less spend the whole movie there. Because as far as I know, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know. I don't think there's much in terms of scientific research in Langley, Virginia. I think it's pretty much the CIA headquarters and not much else. And so the reasoning was not there. That was one of the big points of the movie that really stuck out to us, because we were laughing every time. Like, that was okay. So this is where you're going to see a very vast difference between not a vast difference between these two. Like why we laughed at one movie versus why we laughed at the other. We laughed at one movie just because it was bad. It was just bad. It was like the graphics were awful. The CGI was awful. The acting was way too trying to be serious, but not great. And I'll be the first one to say I have never found an Asylum film that I liked, and I've seen a few. I didn't expect this to be any different, but there were some parts of it that were so bad that they just made us laugh because they were hilarious, and they weren't meant to be.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Tammy and the T-Rex, that movie did not take itself seriously, and that's why we're drawing this comparison, because that movie did it right. It had a plot line that was absolutely ridiculous. However,
but simple.
It was very simple. And it translated really well to the comedy. And there were so many little one-liners here and there that kind of catch you off guard that make you just bust out laughing. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head that really got me. And almost every one of them that I can remember did revolve around the scientist. The scientist was that was doing the whole thing was probably my favorite guy in the whole movie. That dude had so many one-liners that just didn't make sense. Like whenever, this isn't really going to be like a big spoiler thing, because I do suggest you watch the movie because it's hilarious, but Paul Walker's character ends up in the hospital. This doctor, who is trying to build this mechanical T-Rex that's also a living organism, comes in and says he's going to try to revive him because he's not looking great, and he just jumps on it. He's like, wake up, starts just beating his chest in because his assistant unplugged the heart rate monitor, and he just hits him in the chest a few times, go, wake up. And he goes, well, I've done everything I can do. Sorry, there's nothing. And they haul him off and put his brain in this dinosaur. Like that's I think that's the comedy of it all. Is that,
one of the just wailing on him. Like instead of giving him CPR, he just like gets on his chest and starts punching him in the chest.
Yeah.
The one that really stood out to me was that I thought was like one of his catchy one-liners is when Tammy's back at her house after she finally met up with the dinosaur and or finally met up with the T-Rex, and they were like, how do you know that she's made contact with the T-Rex? He goes, I can tell by the way she's walking, because Paul Walker's character was her boyfriend before he turned into a dinosaur. Actually, I guess, and after he turned into a dinosaur, but he's like, I can tell by the way she's walking that she found the dinosaur.
Yeah, they were definitely still an item. And that was another thing. There were moments randomly where she was like, oh, I think his name was Michael in the movie. And she was like, oh, Michael, it's really... And he was like trying to play charades with her to tell her that it was his brain inside this robotic dinosaur's body. It was absolutely hysterical. Probably one of my favorite B films I've seen because of just how good it was in terms of laughability.
Yeah, one of the running gags that they had in the movie that I thought was absolutely hilarious was how inconsistent the length of the T-Rex arms were. It was like the T-Rex had like the little T-Rex arms, but then occasionally would like bend over and like pick somebody up, like reach out and like grab somebody, and it was just like very, very inconsistent. And then there was also a point where they had a shot where it was like very obvious that it was like a human arm inside of a glove, because like they went too far and you could see the arm in the glove, and they just like, fuck it, we're just gonna roll with it.
Yeah, because what was so funny about that was like whenever they did like the phone, when he tried to get the payphone. The payphone was great because you just see this like these two fingers from this T-Rex hand come in, but there's a hand inside it that grabs the phone. And then there was the other one where he picked up his friend. But every time, every time he would be on screen and his arm would come from off screen and be like way up here. And it was just so inconsistent and so great. Because again, you could clearly see there were human hands inside these things grabbing stuff, and it was just, so like you wouldn't even see the fingers close. You would see like something under the fingers grab things. Like it was so
they were bad rubber gloves. It was absolutely hilarious. Definitely a hidden gem that I mean, obviously neither one of us had heard of, but it definitely like they didn't. It was beautiful because they didn't really care of like, oh yeah, we know what this movie is, so we're just going to embrace the comedy that we're going for with it, and not really try to make this serious, and not really try too hard and really push a statement in this. The statement is, yeah, we want to make something goofy. We didn't want to try too hard at it.
Yeah, so that was the biggest thing. They went in that with the mind that we're just going to make something that's entertaining. and
Mhm.
they succeeded. They nailed it. It was so good. Another thing was the what was it, towards the end of the film when he was hiding in the barn. Like this full grown T-Rex is hiding in the barn, and his friend shows up on the bike, and she's laying there snuggled with him in the barn, and he's just like spooning her, and he's this gigantic robotic dinosaur. Oh my god, it was amazing film. You can find it on Showtime. If you have the Showtime app or have access to the Showtime app, it's on there, or you can like rent it on Prime or Vudu or your local video store if you have one. Hopefully,
I don't know if that's still a thing.
right?
It was when that movie came out, though.
Oh, 100%. That movie had to have been flying off the shelf in Blockbusters because that was dude, I don't know many people our age that didn't at some point have a crush on Denise Richards. And that was like
Oh,
peak Denise
absolutely.
Richards, you know? Like that was
Mhm.
before Starship Troopers and before Wild Things. Like
Was it before Starship Troopers?
yeah, I'm pretty
I
sure
guess it.
Starship Troopers came in like later 90s, I believe.
Mm,
But yeah, it had to be one of her first like actual like movie roles.
yeah,
And
yeah. It was very solid.
Paul Walker was a young lad in that. I mean, they were all in high school. Like, I know that doesn't say much. I mean, like, look at Eric Christian Olsen. Like that dude he's been a high schooler in movies for 30 years now. It feels like, but they genuinely look like high schoolers. Paul Walker looked like a kid. It was
Mhm.
strange almost.
Yeah, he was neither fast nor furious at the time.
No, he was definitely not fast. That was proven in that movie. He was not fast at all. I mean, he
Mhm.
did outrun cars for a little bit, but they were not driving fast. As a matter of fact, yeah, everybody else was in cars, and this one guy, Paul Walker of all people's, running on the street. Yeah, he was not
Oh
fast
yeah.
nor furious.
Oh yeah. That's kind of how that all got started.
Spoiler alert, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there was some other stuff that kind of went down this week in terms of some obscure media that we ingested. You actually picked up
Yeah.
a video game from the Humble Bundle, right?
Yeah, so it was actually Humble Choice is actually where it came from, but this kind of goes back to this also takes me back to 1994 because it was a the name of the game is Divinoids. It's Divinoids. But so I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I've never heard it pronounced. But it took me back to the old Rampage days. I don't know if you were the people out there have played Rampage. But basically, you're just a giant kaiju and you tear down buildings in a city. Well, this is kind of like a rethought or like a remaster of that, where there's three different kaiju that you can pick, and they all have like special abilities, and they have two different forms that you could swap between. There's a beast form, and there's like a humanoid form, and they're all sort of based on like different mythological creatures from different mythologies, I guess. But they all have different abilities and special powers, and it kind of works in like a roguelike sense where you go through and you collect items and stuff like that. But it has pretty cool mechanics where you there's like an open world map that you sort of go through and you attack different cities on planets, and you have to destroy like all the cities on a planet and then move on to the next planet, and you keep kind of going down the line. But it actually has a pretty cool thing where you go through and you have to get to all the cities on the map, but you can get attacked by armies like in the open field or like in different environments. And the military can attack you with different things. And some of the things that they attack you with are actually bosses. So there's like a mega tank that'll attack you. There are other like mechs or like kaiju type things that will attack you. And there's a whole like it's definitely a new idea or like a new take on Rampage. But I would say if there's anybody out there that really enjoyed Rampage back in the day, I believe it's co-op up to 4 players. I think there's only 3 different characters that you can play. I was looking online and I didn't see that there was any unlocked for that. But there's 3 different uh, like mythological creatures you can play, and it's a really fun game. Really cool mechanics to it, and lot of stuff, lot of stuff that could come of that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It came out really recently, didn't it? Like very recent.
Yeah, I think no, I want to say 2019, but I honestly don't know.
Yeah, it looks like
Uh,
I'm actually checking it out on Steam right now, and it's showing release
oh, it
date as
actually.
2022.
I was gonna say the trailer came out in 2021, so probably about then.
Yeah, actually, it's not even showing that it's available on Steam yet, and you picked it
Oh, it
up in
might.
Humble.
Yeah, it was
Neat.
actually a humble choice. So like, is the I guess $8 or $11 depending if I think right now they're running a deal for humble choice for $8, but it's normally 11. But yeah, it was just a part of that. So I snagged that up and I loved Rampage back in the day, like the
Same.
Rampage Universal Tour and stuff. Like it was absolutely amazing. And actually, if the game just came out, I'm sure there's still a lot of room for them to come out with more I guess gods and stuff like that. You're technically in a mech suit, so it's probably you're technically in a mech suit. And it actually has a really cool mechanic that I like too, that if your mech suit gets destroyed, instead of using like one of your credits to like respawn, like the old arcade style where you have like the credits and things, instead of using one of your credits, what you actually can do is you have the chance of, if your mech is destroyed, you actually come out as just a small human with all this military and stuff trying to attack you. And if you survive for 10 seconds as a human, they'll drop you another mech and then you can get back in it without having to waste your credits.
Kind of like
So it's like
Titanfall.
yeah, a little like Titanfall. A little like Titanfall. But yeah, it's absolute great game if anybody out there has a chance to pick it up or check it out. I
So,
love me some Rampage back in the day.
so as far as you've seen, like in what you've played of it, have you noticed any
Hmm.
kind of like actual like story driven elements to this? Like is there does it explain, at least to the point that you've played, like why you're in these giant mech suits trying to destroy stuff?
I honestly I haven't seen anything that really stands out. I mean, it looks I mean, honestly, it looks like you're kind of the villain. You're just going to planets and destroying them. I haven't seen anything. I'm not great at paying attention to story,
Same.
but I haven't seen anything. You're way better at it than I am, but I haven't seen anything that really stood out to me. From what I can remember, it sort of just drops you into the game, and you kind of you start off, you pick a mech, and then it drops you in the game, and you just start breaking shit. But one thing I do like that about this that's different than Rampage is this has more of a focus on you destroying, like you fighting the military around you, more so than focused on like breaking the buildings and collecting items from the buildings. Like there are no, like from what I can tell, there are no items that come out of the buildings. You actually get more items from like killing the military that's coming after you, and then you use those to as like a currency to get unlocks and stuff.
Interesting. One thing that's standing out to me as I'm looking into it is that it's up to 4-player local co-op, which is
Hmm.
kind of strange because at this point there are only 3 characters. I'm looking at it. It looks like Medusa can change into Jormungandr. Uh,
Hmm.
I can't. I don't remember what I didn't. I can't pronounce this one guy's name, but he turns into a manticore, and then
Yeah,
Isis turns into a phoenix. And so
yeah,
that's
and
real. I
actually.
find that interesting though that they do that where it's up to 4-player co-op, but there are only 3 characters.
Yeah, I think they're kind of leaving themselves room to make more characters. And then you can also, it has really like drastic color changes that you could do on the characters. So I think
Mm.
there's four colors per character. So like everybody could pick the same like mech suit basically if they wanted to. I don't think you have to like pick separate.
Kind of like
But
in the Paladins game mode where everybody was Betty La Bamba.
yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it actually has some pretty cool mechanics with it too. One mechanic that I really liked was with the Phoenix. It actually had a thing where you had to balance your like heat use when you're bouncing between the Phoenix and like the humanoid form. Like you have to build up heat as the Phoenix, but if you overheat, you have to switch to the normal person, which you could switch back and forth as much as you want. But as you build up heat, you have to switch back to the humanoid to let off the heat. And then if you run out of heat, then you have to be the Phoenix to build up the heat. So like it has cool mechanics like that where it kind of forces you to play different styles, and all of the mechs that you can play in have different abilities and different styles, that like play styles and stuff. It's really cool. It's really cool. It's a much more dynamic game than Rampage was back in the day.
Yeah, Rampage just felt like I knew one of the things of Rampage was that like you were essentially a mutated human in a lab. Because anytime you died,
Hmm.
you just turned back to a human and like ran away naked or whatever. But it still never really gave like a story, and it was just literally just punch, blow stuff up, don't die. So seeing that they've added an actual like element where you have to kind of build like use tactics and balancing and things
Hmm.
like that's interesting. That adds like an extra little bit of challenge in there to be able to get through instead of just Hulk smash on everything.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely has a roguelike build system too, where you kind of build up and you collect items and they give you different abilities. Like they make it to where like your melee reflects missiles back, and there's different things that you can collect. And once you die, it all resets like a normal roguelike. So it's a pretty cool setup. I was excited for it because I really loved Rampage back in the day, and I was very very pleased. I mean I ended up staying in here and played it for like 2 hours after I got it, just because I was like, oh, I wonder how this is. I'll try it out, and then I got roped in for like 2 hours until I got hungry.
Yeah, and that's really cool whenever you actually have like nostalgia for a game and a game reminds you of that, and then it
Hmm.
actually kind of like lives up to it, because you don't get that often. Like normally you kind of feel so attached to the original that it's hard for a newer version of something like that to compete. And so for that game to do that definitely makes it seem like it's worth a pickup. I haven't played it yet myself, but it looks like it's also local co-op, so I guess we'd have to be at the same computer to
Mm.
play it. So I
Yeah,
may have to come out there and give it a shot.
come out of the camper. We'll co-op it. Yeah, I think that's one thing that I really enjoy. Like that's a good point. That's one thing I really enjoy about indie games is indie games are take something that's you're nostalgic for, but which may or may not have had great mechanics back in the day, and then they make a more modern version that runs more like a modern game and it's easier to get a hold of, but it allows indie developers to kind of recreate something that has nostalgia attached to it.
Actually, to that point, there's a game that I played a while back. Like it's been a while. I met the developer's name was Chris at DreamHack Anaheim back in 2020, like right before the pandemic hit. And oh, pardon me, he released this game. It's called The Adventures of Chris, and it's got a very Saturday morning cartoons vibe. And you play this character Chris, and you're on adventures. Shock, I know, but you go around fighting these different villains. Like you and all your friends get turned into different kinds of like toys and stuff. And he gets turned into kind of a balloon, but he can kind of control his ability to balloon and decides he's going to rescue his friends. And every boss you beat, you can gain new powers and things, just like in Mega Man. So it took like a lot of the similar mechanics of Mega Man, but turned him into something completely new. So like gameplay wise, yeah, there's this nostalgia for Mega Man, and then in its aesthetic and style, like stylistically speaking, it was very Saturday morning cartoons esque, but it still had this very original spin on it that made it its own thing. Like you can look at it and say, oh, I could see inspiration from this and this, as opposed to, well, this just looks like a ripoff of this and this. Like you get a lot
Mhm.
nowadays. So that's really cool whenever you can take a look at it from that light. And Adventures of Chris is one I'd like to dive into in a later episode after I've replayed it, because it's been a little while. I'd like to touch on it because it's a really good game.
Yeah, speaking of Mega Man, there's another indie game that if you're into Mega Man style games, there's one called 30XX that is I think it's in beta right now, but you could still buy it. It's definitely not as polished as it should be, but it definitely has the vibe of once it gets there, I feel like it's gonna be a really great game. But it definitely has the vibe of a like roguelike Mega Man, which is absolutely awesome. It's a really fun game, but you can still see where it needs some polish. It's early, so
Yeah.
it's not there yet.
Well,
But that
there are some games out there though that they thrive on chaos and randomness, and
mm,
there's not like a nostalgia factor. There's nothing like that. It's just let's be as random as possible and put this project out there. And I was lucky enough to get my hands on one of these. It was called Fuzz Dungeon. Now Fuzz Dungeon, it came out last year back in June, and I picked it up in the Ukraine bundle they had for itch.io, which I have a massive backlog of games to go through because of that now. But Fuzz Dungeon is a fever dream
Fever dream.
inside of a fever dream. Like it's like if a fever dream went on an acid trip and then had another fever dream. It was so strange and random. You play this this rat duck witch. Yes, you are a combination of those three things.
Not a sandwich.
Not a sandwich. But yeah, no, you play a rat duck witch, and you end up going down this well that takes you to this weird universe where you're supposed to be trying to find the Sasquatch sex amulet, in which the entrance back to your world has been trapped inside. And you go through playing these random little side games. Almost, I don't want to really compare it to Mario Party, but that's the first thing I think of when I hear when I think of random games that all have like a different style. And that's kind of what this had. You go through, you'll see what looks like it definitely would trigger an epileptic seizure. So
yes, if you have a flash warning, anything like that, do not get that game, because it is entirely flashing lights and strobes and
very bright
motion sickness.
Yes, like I was so concerned with my own well-being playing that. Like I was getting like nervous playing it because of just how off the wall it was. I was like, man, I'm going to get sick playing this. But what's weird about it is I still had a good time because of how weird and random it was. But you go through these different levels and you're essentially building a society whenever you look at what the rewards are for each place you visit. It's like it starts at like roads. There's like fences and buildings and people as you're continuing down this path that have all these random little games inside of it. And it's hard to explain because there wasn't like a real super definitive story, but there was this weird part towards the end where it got very real, because you end up in a 3D scale model of the creator of the game's apartment. And he's telling you, as you're trying to gather up all these pieces of dust, he's telling you about everything that's happened. From what I gathered, he built this game during the pandemic while he was just locked in his own apartment for like 2 weeks. And he got real towards the end. And to the point where it was like you said, it's like almost like 13 Reasons Why-ish. It got so kind of like real and dark. It was
it really made you, like, listening to him. It like I almost like want to reach out to him and be like, hey, are you okay, bro? Like
you doing good?
Like you could definitely tell that it definitely had the vibe of like the pandemic hit him hard, and this was like his release to like his stress release, or like his thing that he felt that he needed to do during the pandemic. Like,
yeah. Now, I will say this. I browsed his Twitter page, and his name, I don't want to butcher his name, but I guess I'm gonna. His name is Jeremy. I believe it's pronounced Couillard or Couillard, maybe Couillard. And I went and browsed his Twitter after to kind of see what his content's all about outside of this game that he made, and he's making another game that looks equally as random. So maybe he's just a random guy, which is cool. I'm with that. But yes, this game, like I said, I picked it up in the Ukraine bundle, but it's one you can pick up for like $4. And honestly, if you're into like the off the wall random weirdness, I recommend it for the $4. I'd say it's definitely worth it. You can get it on Steam, on itch, wherever you get your games at. But it's I'm gonna say it's worth the play. There's like not a whole lot you can really get into with it because of just, it's like every game is so different. Like some of them are in hand drawn. Like some of the games are like hand drawn, and some of them are in the 3D. Some of them are like space shooters, and some of them are, you have to collect the items by jumping down like artwork and stuff. Like there are some games that are 2D, some games that are 3D. It's just so much randomness that it's really hard to pinpoint exactly how to describe it.
Yeah, there was a game that you played recently. I don't remember exactly what it is, but this kind of gave me that vibe where the thing where you were running around and doing the spray painting, like just as far as like the style and maybe not so much about the mini games and things, but just the overall the overall style and just, I don't know, I guess the type of game, like I would put them almost in the same category. And
yeah, I could definitely I could definitely see where you're coming from. I'm trying to remember the name of that game because it's been a little while since I've played Sludge Life. Called Sludge Life.
Sludge Life.
Yeah, where everything was just really off the wall and random, but like basically all you were doing was going around and graffitiing walls and things. But yeah, there was, you know what, I'm going to piggyback off that because yeah, I can draw two very, very quick parallels between how random these games are. Sludge Life, I end up in a room that there's just randomly a dog humping a pillow. He's just there doing his thing. Nothing else is in the room. Another room in other game, a Fuzz Dungeon. Objective: make statue puke into horse butthole. Excuse me?
That was one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, and of course I walk into that room and there's this. It was not a horse. You can't tell me it was a horse, but there it was with butthole that big around.
It was gaping.
Yes,
gaping butthole.
What's even better was I walked over, hit the statue's hand, and it started vomiting, and the butthole started glowing. And then it was grab the glowing meat men, which were literally men made of just random meats, and put them in their corresponding. This is making no sense, right? Right, like out of context, I'm saying these things, and it sounds like I'm just saying random words. No, this is an objective in this video game. That is how random it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is not drunk right now.
I am not.
That is just what happened. That is the reality of this fever dream.
Yes, I'm still not convinced that that Mr. Jeremy wasn't on some kind of psychedelic putting this game together, because it got you went through like so many different roller coasters of emotions, you know, because it was like oh, you're just playing this random game where you're trying to do this thing. Then it's like, okay, this is getting really odd. Then it's like, oh shit, this got real. Like, it kind of sits you on a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. It's only like 90 minutes of playthrough, and I didn't know I could experience that much in 90 minutes.
Yeah, it was, you know, it almost had like a weird setup where there's a lot of things going on. It's very psychedelic. There's a lot of just like trying to understand things, and then toward the end, when you go into his apartment and he's telling you this story, it's like you're almost like it really makes you feel a lot, because you're like, wait, so like he created all of this while this is what he was thinking about, or like while this was going on in his head. And like throughout the game, he talks about like having like fallouts with his family and like arguments with his family and stuff, and it kind of builds up to him talking about his experience with COVID and just being 100% isolated, zero human contact for 2 weeks. And it was just kind of like, oh, really makes you feel for the guy.
Yeah, and let's also point out the fact that, not even hiding it, the laptop, the hub, right there.
Oh yeah,
the hub was right there on the screen. Yeah, I mean,
there's actually one of the objectives.
Yeah, literally one of the objectives in the apartment was turn off all the lights, turn off the ceiling fan, put some porn on the laptop, and something colorful on the TV. Which, ironically, before that even became the thing, I had already had like a lot of those objectives done, because I was on the laptop. I was like, oh, cool, look at all these Oh, that's the hub. And I left it up, so that part was already met. And what was really funny is there was a lot of times in the game where there was they were talking about real world stuff a lot. Like there were Amazon Alexas everywhere. Like it wasn't even like a fake clear knockoff of something. Like if you play, say, like a Grand Theft Auto, they have the cars that look exactly like a real life car, but they have a different name in the game. Nope, it was like straight up. It's like, who do you work for? And Amazon is 2 of the 3 options for some reason. Super odd. No holds barred. No punches pulled. I wish I could tell you more, but I just don't know what that was in my heart of hearts.
Yeah, it's definitely a game worth checking out. Watching the playthrough and everything, it's definitely a game worth checking out. I will say, go into it listening to this and knowing that it might make you feel some things, because it starts off just making you feel high, and then you're like, oh,
yeah, then you feel low. It's like,
yeah. You come down hard.
You definitely do. Now, and this is something you're going to get when you pick up games on itch. You know, like that's the one thing about itch. It is the biggest grab bag of things that you could possibly imagine in terms of like indie games. In terms of other things you could find on itch, you know, I actually took a chance to test a couple of games from the Dredx found footage game jam, which I'll tell you a little bit about the game I dove into, but I want to give a little bit of actually kind of a preview of what we're going to be talking about a lot more next week is the Dredx Collection from Dredxp, which I will tell you more about here in a second. I do want to talk about Amanda the Adventurer because this little 10-minute game was even more nightmare fueled than the LSD-induced journey that was Fuzz Dungeon. It's kind of a short game, so it won't be a whole lot, but Amanda the Adventurer is this game where you have 3 episodes of a show. Amanda the Adventurer is essentially Dora the Explorer, but she has a pet sheep named Wooly, who I believe is allergic to apples, if I remember correctly from the game. And you actually pop in different VHS tapes that are episodes of this show. And she tells you, like, hey, can you spell this? And if you spell it wrong, she gets progressively more crazy looking. Or if she tells you, can you lead us here? Or, because how Dora always does it. It's like, do you see the mountain? Say mountain kind of thing or something. If you click the wrong thing the first time, she'll get like frustrated and say, no, I said this. And if you click the wrong thing again, the TV will go static, come back on, and whatever you were clicking on is gone. And she looks very angry. It's free. Go give it a try. It's really, really weird. I'm actually, or you can go watch it on my YouTube channel because it'll be up by the time this launches on YouTube. So, link in the description. Go check it out on my YouTube. Also, check out Wingles. Wingles has stuff. All of our links are below.
Yeah, I got stuff.
There's our plug. But to tell you a little bit about Dredx and why we're going to be discussing a lot more next week in regards to it, Dredx actually has been putting out these games called the Dredx Collections. And as of right now, there are 4. And the reason we're going to kind of start jumping into it is they're getting ready to release 5. And these games are a whole bunch of small horror games made in a very short amount of time by individual indie devs, which a bunch of them I've gotten to be really close with because there's some really amazing and really talented people involved. But they're built within another game. So it's like this game is almost a game launcher for these other games. And there's like an overarching meta to it. Now, 1, 2, and 3 kind of all lead into each other, and then Dredx 4 is called The Hunt, which it's kind of its own thing. And from what I gather on 5 is actually going to be its own thing. But we're going to talk a lot more about that next week. If any of you have experience with the Dredx Collections or any other Dredx games, feel free to comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, doesn't matter. You're not going to hear this part because I'm cutting it out of the audio. But yeah, let us know. Let us know some of your favorite Dredx games, because I know some of the people that we know, a few people within our little circle of friends have actually played a lot of the Dredx games. And so, I would like to hear from y'all what your favorites are.
And I have not played any of the Dredx games, so I do not know. I do not have a favorite one other than I would maybe say Squirrel Stapler, because that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head, which is also Rev's least favorite one.
Oh my god, that f***ing game.
Actually, I don't even know that least favorite is the correct word. It's just the one you dread the most.
Yeah, and it is the Dredx Collection, so it did its job right. Now, there are some really, really good ones in there. Squirrel Stapler is it's something. It's definitely one. But like I said, we'll dive. I actually think next week I may do like a top 5 of my favorite Dredx Collection games so far. But aside from that, that's really, I think, all we have for this week. Keep an eye out, though, because we should be, if it's not up now, it's going to be up soon. We're going to have a whole deal about our romp through this Oddities Expo that we're visiting, because as of this recording, we're going to be there tomorrow. As of you watching it, we'll have already been there.
Yeah, I'm gonna be filming while we're there, and we're probably gonna do some other things around town while we're there, because I don't know, we'll just take advantage of Pip driving us places.
Exactly.
Pip chauffeuring us to Tulsa.
Exactly. There are a lot of actual things that we're wanting to take a look at in Tulsa, and like I said, check our links in the description. Go check us out on social media, because we're gonna have a lot of pictures there as well. We're gonna take all kinds of fun stuff. We're going to have some good pictures with some good cameras, just some cell phone stuff. But there's a lot of stuff in Tulsa to see. We'll even have some videos and stuff, just kind of like posted B-roll over there. So definitely check out our socials, because you want to follow along. It's gonna be a fun time.
Do it.
Do it. Do it. But I believe that does it for us this week here on Into the Obscure. We hope you enjoyed. This is actually kind of our first official episode, because episode 0 was more of just an intro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like our YouTube, like, featured video to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then this one, we actually talked more about movies and games and more of the actual content that we're going to be focusing on.
For sure. And I'm going to, obviously, we're going to have links to the everything that we talked about today also down here, where you can check out Tammy and the T-Rex. You can check out Divinoids. You can check out Fuzz Dungeon if you so choose. And then I'll also have a link to the Dredx found footage jam down below.
Are you gonna upload your playthrough of Fuzz Dungeon?
I think I will. I think I'm just gonna upload I probably won't do the unabridged stream because I didn't have my chat on the side. So anytime I talk to chat, it would be completely out of context. So I'll probably kind of edit it a little bit. But yeah, it's gonna go up, and I'm also gonna have my little short Amanda the Adventurer thing on there as well. What about you? What do you got? I mean, you also stream on Twitch. You've been streaming a little bit more lately.
Yeah, I've been doing art on Mondays. Thursdays I've been doing games. It's mostly been Paladins. Paladins has just been killing it lately with coming out with characters and stuff. Not to just add more content to the end of this to the end of this podcast, talk about another game, but I've been playing a lot of Paladins with community and just really whoever wants to hop in. And then art on Mondays. I might do like a whittling stream or something like that. But other than that, I've been doing animated emotes, and I'm working on a vlog right now. I'm in the process of building a new standing desk, and that'll be a vlog. And then we'll also have a vlog of the Oddities Expo, so that'll be good time too. There might be 2 vlogs for that. Rev might make his own. I don't know. I'll just give him all my footage if he so chooses to edit another video. But I will have my own on my own channel.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna pull some footage because I'm gonna get in front of that camera and ham it up a little bit while it hangs from your neck.
Yeah, I got my new camera necklace, so I'm pretty excited about this. Just a little horse collar setup. Look at that. Now I got hands.
Boom. And it's pretty sturdy. I actually watched. It's pretty sturdy. But once again, thank you all for joining us this week. We hope you enjoyed. And look forward to having another episode ready for you next week. Love you. Stay obscure.